This goes with a lot of training. Well, not really training. Well, I guess you could think of it as training. Um, it means that there are obviously a lot of us with the branch of mankind that have been well versed in how fractal light mind virus, how the virus works, because everybody that is here is connected to it. Okay. And out of fairness to everyone that is here, including myself, one of the methods that we use, or I use, to determine how deep the programming has gone into your cellular memories as a result of Star Wars, is not just measuring how much resistance you have from the moment that your soul came into creation itself, and how much resistance is actually associated with not only your soul group, but your star system, and actually all the experiences that you've ever had since the beginning in which you became aware of who you are in energy with the soul and its spirit, that is held captive to fractal light. Okay. The programming, which is known as the AI API interface, application program interface. And that is to measure how much of that the AI you're running on that you've yet to clear in codes, goo codes. Okay. Which means you're running that program app. And a program app would be a bag of potato chips. It's okay. You're choosing to experience, using your energy to experience eating a bag of potato chips. Now you're recording that in memory, what you did. That was your record. Okay. Based on the AI that was producing it. Like that. Okay. Now you can go all the way back to the first seeds that were seeded in any universe, if you want, that the language of DNA has the ability to connect to, provided that those codes and those communication lines are still open and not distorted as a result of what? Mutagenic effects. Now you understand why, as a polarity integrator's monopole, I clear what's known as DNA debris fields, fractals, try and renegate them, which means that on a spiritual battlefield, when you consider everything they did in Europe, just in modern times, which would be World War I, if you've ever studied it, I used to do this a lot. You'd wonder, but those that know how this works would know why I'm doing it. But what I used to do sometimes, particularly on the Eastern Front, which was Nazi against Stalingrad, that's why it was not a coincidence that all of a sudden Kim mentioned Stalingrad. Remember when I mentioned Stalingrad before and I put that up on my post? Completely surrounded. Getting the picture from the inside out, outside in. Okay. It's like being squeezed. Remember what they used to call squeezed box? I'm a sponge. A monopole is the ultimate sponge, which means you're willing to absorb all of it. Burn it all off from whence it came into creation. Okay? So that's one of the reasons why I realized, because of who I am and the jobs that I do, I have to take it with a grain of salt. Anything that is experienced by anybody else that is here, that's held captive by it. It meaning information technology management systems, which would be your AI. So one of the ways that we used to test, because I was not alone, okay, they've gone their separate ways, was to, how do I put this, doing things to blow your mind, to see how free you actually are. The difference between a follower that's held captive by the AI, which is a follower, which is a rule-based function, and whether you're willing to accept, without condition, what somebody else presents to you that you now see in your mirror in visual form, that's not doing any harm to you, but you perceive it in a negative way. Okay? In a negative way. The negative way. The negative magnetic polarity way. And that would be by virtue of codes that have yet to be burned off, because the connection that your DNA has with the AI that is producing that negative magnetic polarity reaction by what you see on the visualized spectrum that is not doing any harm to you. That's how we test you all. That's why I used to do things in a visual way and realize I know why I'm doing this. The question is, do they know why I'm doing this in a visual way? Because then they're going to have perception of what that actually means by virtue of what's held in memory that represents the trauma that is associated with all the energies from which have been used and thus weaponized against the one. Okay? That's why sometimes you might not agree with this. We would do things deliberately to see what the reaction state is going to be, whether it's positive or negative. Now we're measuring the resistance, which means has yet to clear. Because the purity of light is experiencing the purity of our light, which is an enormous amount of fire, which is a purifier. What we're measuring is the purity of the light, which is the purity of the fire that is not burned off, going all the way back down the female mitochondria side to the very first mother. The very first mother. And every cell that is in your physical body that represents the operating system of every single version that has a connection to all the other versions by being connected to the all creation. Since time began, which would be the end of day one. The one. It's one of the reasons why throughout my life, from the time I was a little boy, I began doing things that I needed to do, that I needed to experience in order to burn off everything that represented what I've ever had a fear or negative-based reaction to, based on what others' perception is of how I'm going to respond to that, either in a positive way or a negative way. Because now we're tied into precisely what Yellow Rose put up one time was an image of how the central nervous system gets hardwired to the reptile brain that doesn't even belong there, in order to seal us to the wrong branch. That's what made that particular act on their behalf such a forbidden crime, for which they can never, ever, ever repay. The damage that was done to souls and fractals of light therein. That's the truth of it. Have a good day. I love you all.